Okay, go ahead.
Great. I'm just going to make the general announcement for everyone who's joined us that we are waiting for one more commissioner to join. They have a tech issue and we expect them to rejoin us any minute now. So we're going to wait to get started. Oh, that wasn't the commissioner. So we're still waiting for one more commissioner to join us. Hi, Tammy. I was just announcing for the public that's listening that we're waiting for one more commissioner to join us, and it's Jacqueline, so she's here. Great. Um, Ephraim, if we may, I'll invite Kim Wormsley to do the housekeeping remarks.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
Are we ready then to start? So maybe before you do that, Kim, why don't I officially call our meeting to order?
Okay.
So welcome to the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission meeting for HP Funds Committee, and that's our Homelessness Prevention Funds Committee meeting, which we are calling to order today, Monday, October 21st at 2:04 p.m. And we'll now hand it over to Kim for housekeeping.
Welcome, committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Legal Services Trust Fund Homeless Prevention Funds Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. We are using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please use the raise hand feature. Please utilize this tool to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. A friendly reminder, this is a video conference and to please be aware of the surroundings behind you. All Legal Services Trust Fund Commission meetings and committee meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar's website. Zoom captioning is available. To enable, select live transcript at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then select enable transcript. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Chris, may you call the roll?
Yes. Chair Escobedo.
Here.
Commissioner Alakani.
Here.
Commissioner Mahoney.
Here.
Commissioner Sandville. Let us know that he's unable to join. So we have 3 committee members, which does make quorum. And I'll go ahead and do roll, Ephraim, for liaisons and staff as well.
Thank you, Chris.
Selena Copeland from LAC. I already see Lauren, so I'm sorry. Hi, Lauren. Thank you for joining us for Selena. We have Melanie Snyder from the Judicial Council. Hi, Melanie. I believe those are our liaisons. And then for State Bar staff, I have Kim Wormsley, Kim Turner, Heidi Slater, and myself, Chris McConkey. Did I miss anybody, Kim Turner?
Thank you. Jennifer Zelnick will be joining us in a little bit.
Great. Okay, and that concludes the roll, Ephraim.
Chris, thank you. Commissioners and liaisons, thank you for joining us this afternoon, as well as any members of the public. And with that, we'll ask him if there are any members of the public present wishing to provide public comment.
Yeah, there's 2 people. I'll let the first person speak.
Great.
Do you want to limit public comment to 2 minutes?
Just as a reminder, we are happy to take public comment and exercise a 2 to 3 minute time frame for public comment.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, David, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yes, hi, this is David Miscavige, the glorious leader of Scientology, and I just want to commend the board and particular individuals for their wonderful behavior. Major shout out to Robert Mangle, a chief Scientology counselor. We have trained him very well, so well, in fact, he executed his proper duties of assaulting a Jane Doe on the elevator while exiting the courtroom. Wonderful, wonderful show of professionalism. And I'm so glad that the Sheriff's Department, a major shout out to them, let a man commit assault in broad daylight at a courtroom and not put him in handcuffs. So thank you, board, for continuing to keep his license despite committing assault. And thank you, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, for not arresting him. Now, another major shout out for a beautiful display of unprofessionalism by Kendrick Moxon, who has several times committed the felony of perjury on several court cases. And I want to commend this board for continuing to keep his law license. We have trained you, the board, very well. We have trained Moxon on committing felonies very well. And we have trained the Angelinos to accept this type of behavior. So major shout out to everybody all across the board. Beautiful, beautiful behavior. Similarly, major, beautiful shout out to Leah Safian, a literal Epstein family lawyer who has also committed several felonies by outright misserving people and literally committing perjury. And thank you, board. We have trained you very well on being a good lapdog for Scientology and not disbarring them. So thank you again. Another just a wonderful, beautiful shout out to the, let's see, we got Scientology lawyer Safian. We got Scientology Judge Rodriguez. Major shout out to Judge Rodriguez for issuing absolutely baseless TROs and losing literally every single one of them. And we just want to thank him for filing these TROs on completely baseless merits, and the bar yet again being good little lapdogs and allowing it to happen. You guys are just so well trained. We could not have asked you to keep your TRs in any better. Stats are up and vertical and PR is tightly in. And this is your glorious leader, David Miscavige, thanking you once again for being good little lapdogs and not putting these people in jail and disbarring them. So with that, my commendations end, and I thank the board for their time.
Thank you. And just as a reminder for our meeting today, this is not a meeting of the full commission. It is a meeting of our committee, which is our Homelessness Prevention Funds Committee that oversees and provides guidance on the administration of our Homeless Prevention Funds grant program. Kim, any other members of the public wishing to provide public comment today?
Yes, there's one more person with their hand raised.
All right, why don't we go ahead and unmute and
Hi, this is just my general public comment. This is Amy. I'm concerned because there looks like there's some collusion with the city attorney. Her name is Heidi Soto. She's been denying people permits on L. Ron Hubbard Way. She's in collusion with Kevin James. They've been denying our people that want to go against human trafficking and child trafficking. They're denying this person a permit to have an event on a street that's on the street where the child trafficking cult is. And the person's name is Kevin James. They're at they've been in contact with that person that works with the attorney of the city of Los Angeles named Heidi Soto. It's a big concern. Also, as far as homelessness is concerned, they're not even removing the planters on the street that have been they've been ordered to remove them, and that impacts on the homeless population not being able to utilize that easement for encampments so that they can set up tents. I think that you guys are like in the twilight zone of not doing anything about these really corrupt attorneys that you allow to stay on the bar and collude with the child trafficking cult that actually, if they go against the cult, they will put them on the street and they'll be homeless. So you got to do some advocacy and stop sticking up for the cult of Scientology, because the world is watching, and they don't care about homeless people. They want to they stuck somebody out on the street the other day because he was gay, and they don't allow gay people in their cult, and he was homeless with only $12 to his name after they totally took advantage of his credit cards, and they stole a lot of his money going through his phone. They were able to swipe a lot of his credit from the phone. There was no advocacy for these people that are leaving this cult. And it's a big issue, and that Scientology has taken over LA, and there's direct collusion. And I yield back my time.
thank you. Kim, any other members of the public wishing to provide public comment at this time?
No.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. All right. Well, why don't we jump right into our agenda for today? And wondering here. All right, so we start off in our first item of business as an informational item, starting at item number 3. We don't have a formal chair's report, but I did want to take a very brief second as chair of the committee to one, welcome Kim Turner, I'm sorry, Kim, to as our new committee liaison, but also take a moment to thank Jennifer, who has been serving as our liaison and has done just a fantastic job, and is now will be engaging with the committee on some specific items, but is assuming a larger role and working on a number of other issues, still interacting with the commission. So I just wanted to take a brief moment as chair to say thank you to Jennifer for her work and support. This is obviously a very important grant program, and her leadership has been steadfast, extremely effective. And to say welcome to Kim, who we look forward to working with and seeing in our committee meetings. So thank you for that. And with that, we'll have us go on to item number 3.1 in our agenda, which is an update on our HP grant administration. And I will turn it over to Heidi. Heidi, good to see you, and on to you.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Can you go ahead and advance the slide, Kim? Thank you. So today, as for our informational update, we are going to be presenting on the HP4 grant closeout. As you may know, the HP4 grant ended on June 30th of 2024. Next slide, please. And so as part of the HP4 grant, there was the initial HP4 grants that we administered. And there was, from those grant funds, we distributed $25 million, a little over $25 million. The total number of expenditures through that grant through the end of the grant period was $24,509,708, leaving an unspent balance of $719,000 and change, which is roughly 2.8% of the total grants fund. And then there out of the 46 grantees, 8 of them had unspent funds. And then in addition, out of those 46 grantees, 7 had budget deviations that were not, where they did not request a budget modification. So we'll be dealing with that later on in the agenda today. Because we didn't give out the full amount of the HP4 grant funds in the first application cycle, we initiated a HP4 supplemental grant where we distributed another $3 million, roughly $3 million. Of that, $3,175,735 were spent of those grant funds, leaving $94,959 as unspent funds. The percentage is about, again, 2.9% there, and that was 2 out of the 17 grantees had unspent funds, and 2 out of the grantees have budget deviations where they did not request a budget modification. So in total, we have $814,557 that are unspent from this grant fund, which represents 2.86% of the total grants distributed. And we are exploring whether or not we have to return those funds, or if we can offer an extension to spend those grant funds. So that will be explored. That's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Any questions from members of the committee? Thank you, Heidi. All right, seeing no questions, why don't we proceed on down to the next item on our agenda, which is agenda item 5.1, approval of the minutes for our June 13th, 2024 meeting. Are there any members of the committee who may have questions or requested revisions to those minutes? I'll wait a minute or so, and if not, we would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll motion to approve.
Jacqueline, would you like to second?
Yes, I'd like to second that.
Thank you. Wonderful. Chris, do we need a vote to approve our minutes?
So I have Commissioner Mahoney moving, Commissioner Alakani seconding, and I'll take the vote. Alakani,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Sandville, I believe is still absent, and Escobedo.
Yeah.
Motion passes. And that concludes, I think, this agenda item. All right, and then Kim Turner is the next item, 7.1.
That is correct. Efrain, if we're ready to progress, I am ready to present with Heidi on 7.1. Might have frozen a bit there, Efrain.
Oh, our chair froze. So we do have to pause the meeting until we can re-achieve quorum. I see he dropped off, so I'm sure he'll be back in a moment.
No problem. We can just wait a moment.
If his work computer is anything like my work computer, it's probably forcing him to restart right now to install an update, which always happens for me in the middle of a meeting. And then you might just want to keep an eye on your email, Kim Turner, just in case email's broke. Do you, Kim Turner, have, oh, here we go. Welcome back, Chair Escobedo.
Hello. Sorry, I lost connectivity somehow, but I'm reconnected, rebooted. So apologies for that. I
That's
think we
totally
dropped off
fine.
on item 7.1. So let's proceed with the agenda.
No problem. Thanks so much. All right, I'm going to handle this along with Heidi Slater. I'm Kim Turner, Senior Program Analyst with the Office of Access and Inclusion and also the Committee Coordinator. And I do want to just add my special thanks to all the staff supporting our committee and all the committee members and liaisons, as well as Jennifer Zelnick for her terrific work on the committee. And today we're going to talk a little bit on HP3 grant budget revision requests. Essentially, in terms of background, staff received 3 2021 to 2024 HP formula and 1 2022 to 2024 HP RFP budget revision requests. Staff reviewed those requests, of course, to determine if committee and LSTFC approval would be needed. And staff approved 1 HP3 formula and 1 HP RFP requests that were between 10 and 25%. And I'm going to show you in a moment the table with these details. And further background is that there were 2 HP formula budget modification requests that do exceed 25%, requiring approval. And you can see the names of the organizations involved: Disability Rights Legal Center, Coalition of California Welfare Rights Organizations, Public Law Center, RFP grant, and a Public Law Center formula agreement. And so effectively with these organizations, all actually had decreases in their attorney and paralegal salaries spending, which accounted for some of the requests, as well as several organizations having non-personnel related expenses in terms of technology, travel, insurance, and space. As a sampling, all detailed in the memos appended to our agenda online. So we have 2 that we're recommending for approval above 25% and 2 that are staff approved between 10 and 25%. Heidi, do you have anything to add?
No, you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, all the details are available in the memo as well. So we now wish to inquire whether the committee concurs. It is resolved that the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission, LSTFC, Homelessness Prevention Funds Committee recommends that the LSTFC approve the 2 2021 to 2022-2024 homelessness prevention HB3 budget revision request as described in staff's memo dated October 21st, 2024. And I would pass it to Chris McConkey for the vote.
Are there any questions from the commissioners about these 2 homelessness prevention 3 budget revision requests from Disability Rights Legal Center and CCWRO? And I did want to note, and correct me if this is wrong, Kim Turner or Heidi, the request from CCWRO was actually a deliverable that the committee or commission gave to them. They needed to submit a budget revision request. So this is their request that they're delivering as expected. So that's like what we knew that one was coming.
Yes.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know we've spent a lot of time. It's great to see them submit their budget revision. Any questions from or comments from committee members before we entertain our motion? No. Kim, I wonder, are there any representatives from any of the organizations represented here that wish to provide public comment on this recommendation on this item?
I'm not sure if any of these people from the organization, but nobody has their hand raised to speak.
Great. Well, we have the resolution from staff before us. Love to entertain a motion to approve the recommendations or approve the resolution.
I will move to approve the resolution.
Great. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Thank you. Chris, over to you for the vote.
So I have Commissioner Mahoney moving, Commissioner Alicani seconding, and the vote begins now. Alicani,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Sandville is absent, and Escobedo.
Yes.
That's 3 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, so the motion carries. And Chair Escobedo, I think I was supposed to announce the results of the vote aloud for the resolution that was adopting the minutes. So I did say that motion carried, but just for the record, if I may, I will say that for the previous resolution, which was to adopt the June 13th, 2024 minutes, that was 3 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, and that motion also carried. Okay.
Thank you, Chris. We'll now proceed on to the second item in our business portion of the agenda, which is item 7.2, action on unreported HP2 grant budget deviations. And we'll welcome and hand it over to Jennifer.
Thank you. Thanks, Ephraim. Thanks, Kim. I wanted to start and thank you both for your kind words. I really enjoyed coordinating the HP Funds Committee and look forward to continuing to work together. If we can advance the slide, please. Thanks. So I'll give a little background, then we'll talk about unreported HP2 budget deviations, and then I'll go over the proposed resolution. So by way of background, the HP2 grant period ended on December 31st of 2023, and budget revision requests were due a month later on January 31st of 2024. The final HP2 annual evaluation, which included the grant closeout materials, was due on April 3rd of 2024. Grant closeouts asked grantees to report the total grant expenditures by budget line item and to identify unspent funds to be remitted to the State Bar. State Bar staff used the report to compare grantees' line item spending to their approved budgets in order to identify any areas of unapproved budget deviations. So we've already, Kim, may I ask you to advance the slide? Thank you. So we've already discussed a little bit about the functional matrix, but as a reminder, budget modifications that are under 10% are permissible without needing any sort of approval. Modifications between 10 and 25% may be approved by staff during the grant period, and budget modifications that are 25% or greater require commission approval. There were 82 HP2 grants, and staff identified 10 grants with budget deviations that were greater than 10%. 8 of those were between 10 and 25%, and 2 were greater than 25%. Staff could normally approve requests between 10 and 25%, as I just indicated, but because these deviations were submitted after the budget revision deadline had passed, the commission must decide whether it wishes to approve those budgets as well. So on these next few slides, you'll see the budget deviations. We presented them from the smallest percentage deviation to the largest. Generally, grantees reported that they did not submit a budget revision request because of an oversight, or they did not realize it was necessary, or there were staffing changes and it got lost in the shuffle. Many grantees also detailed plans to safeguard against unreported budget deviations in the future, and many of those grantees have already implemented or begun to implement these plans in order to avoid unreported budget deviations. And you'll see that all of the budget deviations include changes between personnel line item expenditures. And in the memo, staff indicated that we recommend approving all of these budget deviations. So Kim, if I may ask you to go to the next slide. So I'm happy to entertain questions, and if not, I'm happy to read the motion.
Thanks for the presentation, Jennifer. Are there any questions from or comments from members of the committee?
Yeah, Ephraim, it's Tammy. Just a quick question on that they weren't aware of the need to submit. Was that just I mean, it seems like a lot, I guess not relatively speaking, but several that had suggested that they weren't aware of the requirement to submit. Is this something unusual?
So what I can say is that in our grant agreements, it is very clear that grantees have to report budget deviations timely. However, we recognize that sometimes staff changes, sometimes there are other reasons why staff might not know or forget. And I think that part of the efforts of our office moving forward are going to be to make sure that grantees really understand the budget deviation process, including the need to ask for to make these revision requests. So we're going to make sure that we reiterate that to grantees moving forward. But technically everyone did know about it.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Sure.
Can I jump in on this, or can I ask a quick question, Jennifer? Like, and I don't want to undercut the staff's strong recommendation that we do that the recommendation that the committee recommend that these be accepted because of the sort of nuances of individual programs flagging that they weren't aware of it. But I do want to flag I think, just so you know that like staff is on it. We typically send a reminder email like 2 months before the end of the grant period. Being like, if you go and check and see if maybe you need to submit this revision before the grant period ends. I think we did do that for HP4, but we still found their explanations sufficiently convincing to recommend to the committee that it recommend that these ones be approved this time. But like there really needs to be like a tightening up at the of sort of the individual organizations is sort of like checks for these sorts of things, and we're happy to work with them and provide them with technical assistance to do that. We did think that that was like appropriate for this round. Is that, Heidi, does that feel fair? Jennifer, does that seem right? Okay.
That's correct. We did all of that for HP2, but I'll defer to Heidi now.
And I would love to add just a little context also. So what we have found as we've closed out the various grants over the last year is that there has been a wide misunderstanding about how to calculate what a budget deviation is. So many of the programs have done their own internal calculations and determined they don't think they need them, but they don't calculate them the way we internally calculate those deviations. And so we have recommended through this year that all sort of budget deviations at the end of the grant period be approved. However, going into the next year, we won't be taking the same approach. We did do a budget modification training for grantees in September, I believe. And sort of we did go through that. We provided them a tool that they could use to determine if budget modifications are necessary. So going forward, I don't think we should have as many budget deviations. And if so, we may not be as likely to recommend approval after that process.
Thank you, Heidi and Chris, for the additional context.
Any other comment follow-up
Yes.
question from committee members? Yes, Jacqueline.
Yes, thank you all so much for clarifying and providing those additional explanations because, I think it's very important. It seems that enough information was provided, reminders were provided, and I, appreciate that the staff considered some apparently exceptional circumstances, but going forward, I think grantees should be very clear that this may not happen in the future. So thank you so much for all of your additional work on that as well.
So Kim Turner,
Thank you,
that's
Jacqueline.
something we can, when we email them, if and when we email them to say that the full commission has accepted the committee's recommendation that these be accepted or approved, which I like, this would be after November 8th, we can include some language like that. Like, please be aware, as we've discussed, this may not, this explanation may not lead to approval next time or something. You know what I mean? Like we can just, let's make a note to like when we send that and that email so that they know that it was approved if it happens, that's the case.
Thank you.
So thank you for those comments, Jacqueline and Tammy. So just a couple for me, I just want to share. One is sort of along this same vein. I think it would be great that pending our action, we do ensure in our communication that we just counsel the organizations on here's where you can find the information on it, and also remind them that if there are any changes or things that they can always reach out to us just to confirm whether what's evolving in their programs does require a modification. I think it would be wise for us to do that. And, it's hard to say whether, don't do it again, but at least provide them the information and also let them know that if they have questions about these, this is when is the appropriate time to do it, and this is who they can reach out to make sure they see it. I did have a question, or just wondering if staff might share a little bit more on implications here. As I was looking at the variances, obviously the Southern California stood out for me. And so was just wondering, as I was looking at that, I mean, we have deviations both in their formula and their RFP allocations, and they're fairly significant. So I'm just wondering, for my own edification, what does that mean? I mean, they're different pots of funding, but they're each at over 20%. One's like 40% of the funding, and just kind of wondering, since it looks like the modification is it's unspent dollars. And I'm talking about, Community Legal Aid SoCal. So just wondering if you have a little bit more background. I think the explanation certainly makes sense, and all the explanations mainly are on look like spending reductions and sort of just staffing turnover and whatnot, but just wondering implications wise for the grantees of this large of a deviation, and sort of where those then dollars are being spent, if at all.
Sure. So I would just clarify that these aren't, we're not saying that they're not spending the dollars here. We're saying that they've moved funds between, for CLA SoCal's formula, you can see that they're reducing spending on attorneys, but they are spending that money in great part by increasing spending to other staff line items, specifically paralegals and other staff. So, and then Kim, if you mind going to the previous slide, just so I can confirm. So yeah, it was the same explanation for their RFP grant. And one thing that I would say is, it's in a sense, or not in a sense, these are large budget deviations, and staff don't deny that. But on the other hand, the goal of these grants is for the organizations to spend these public dollars doing homelessness prevention legal services. I think that to a certain degree, staff anticipate that there will be modifications that happen to a budget, because it's really hard to predict exactly how you can spend down, especially over a multi-year grant, because, for example, you don't know if an attorney will be doing 20% or 25%, and if a paralegal will be doing, 10 or 15% of the work. So I think it's normal to anticipate a little bit of movement. But I think also that when we saw those large deviations for CLA SoCal, and also for Senior Advocacy Network, because they had a large percentage for their HP2 grant as well, we did reach out and provide technical assistance to not only ensure that the grantees understand when they need to submit a budget deviation, but to make sure that they think about those things moving forward when they're thinking about budgets as well. But I did want to reiterate that staff aren't concerned that this reflects the work or lack of work. It's just that there were movements between the staffing line items in those cases.
Can I jump on that explanation, Jennifer? Just to say that to the extent that an explanation might be something, I never love reading the explanation like, oh, we just kind of had like a change in grant leadership and we missed that this was necessary. But to the extent that they say like, we did move funding from this row to this row in response to something like a staff vacancy. Like I actually love to see that they pivoted. Like I don't want them, I'd rather see that they pivoted in a way that's compliant with the statute's requirements on their approved project than fail to pivot and then send money back at the end of the grant period. I would rather they find a use for the funds that's permissible and still gets the job done. So whenever I see that, I'm like, yes, that's actually what I want to see. But in this case, I think the thing that really needs to be different next time is that they request the change during the grant period and not have State Bar staff have to flag for them that they should have requested a change.
I have a question. Are any of these funds federal funds?
They're all federal funds, Chaplain.
So
All of them.
actually, no. So the grant, the HP3 grant is federal funds. But HP2 is state funding.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And the next agenda items on HP3, so the one that Kim Turner is about to present will be federal. Yeah. I wanted to also, I feel a little bad, like I'm like shamelessly plugging State Bar staff in this, but I'll do it anyway. So I was just going to say, because I don't know if Heidi's still on, but Heidi, having recognized the need to increase our technical assistance to all grantees to make the budget revision expectations and process easier for them, did give a webinar in September that was very well attended on Heidi, is this right? Am I forgetting the extent to which you focused on budget revision requests in that webinar? I think it was more on like budgeting generally, but did it not include a worksheet that they could fill out to identify if they needed a budget revision, if they needed to request a budget revision?
That's
Or am I
right.
conflating that? Okay, so
No,
so
that's
Heidi
right.
has really stepped up the TA in the last like 2 months on this. But
Well, in
this grant
addition,
ended before that happened.
yeah, and in addition, we are modifying our budget modification forms internally so that when grantees request them, they can see what the deviation is. And so there's a little more transparency in the process. And because I recognize that this has been a real struggle for all of our grantees, and we have a very high budget deviation percentage across all grants. And so my goal is to bring that down, and so that everybody knows to submit a budget modification when they need to be done. And so I think our communication, our training around that will continue to be pretty forward.
Approximately what percentage of the funds are federal? Do you have a breakdown or approximate breakdown on that?
So for HP, I think that depends on what time period you're looking at. But if we look at the entire universe of HP, there were $80 million in federal funds for HP3, and the rest of the funds were state. And I believe it was a pot of $161 million. Not the best at math, but I believe that's about 50%. Yeah. So, but I wouldn't want to speak to the entire universe of grant funding that the State Bar has. Maybe I would pass that to Heidi.
Well, the one thing I would sort of focus on this is, so all of our HP fund grants have concluded except for HP3, which is the only federal grant amongst the HP grants. And so given that those are federal funds, there will be a more robust effort to ensure that all grantees have submitted budget modifications that need them before the end, so that we don't have to be in a disallowed cost situation for a federal grant fund where they weren't spent in alignment with the approved budget.
Great, thanks for that. So just one request. So is it my understanding correct in that we will vote on this motion on a committee, but because the changes that we're looking at, this will also go to the commission for a full vote? That's correct? Okay.
Yes.
So one request or suggestion, and Tammy and Jacqueline, please chime in, is I think it'd be good to just look at the deck one more time and maybe somewhere in that deck make it clear that as part of our process in both TA and due diligence and you all developing your recommendation, that there has been sort of a clear and direct communication with these grantees, that there was a window for it, that they were provided information as to what is a deviation, when they should do it, so that as part of our process, we've kind of like counseled them, right? And said, hey, we did alert them already. I think my natural instinct here was like, when we respond to them, we should let them know that this is what's expected. This HP2 is closed. The grant has sort of closed in 2023, right? For that 21 through 23 period. So that would be my suggestion, is maybe we make it clear in the PowerPoint that these were the steps we took, right? We reminded them, we shared with them the information, and we let them know the TA, so that the full commission understands we're not just recommending it and they told us they forgot and we're still approving it. No, it's we reminded them as part of the process, and they've received communication as to how they were to do it.
So
Kim Turner,
Ephraim,
will you help me remember that for the November 8th? Thank you. That's a great recommendation.
I was just going to clarify though, I think this will probably go on consent. So maybe we can put that into the memo for the commission as an
Yeah.
additional sentence in the memo.
That's perfect. I think it's just making sure on our end how we present it and what we submit for record, that we sort of made note of that. I don't think it's necessarily something for discussion or to hold an item for. I agree. But Tammy, Jacqueline, any thoughts, or what do you all think about the recommendation?
That's an excellent suggestion, Efren, and staff moving forward with that. That's very good. And I'm wondering, has there been any kind of pattern related to this, particularly with those with the categories of the largest deviations? Has this happened a lot in the past, or how frequently in the past? Any data on that right now?
I might ask Heidi about that if you have some insights into that.
I would say probably not in the way that it should exist, because every grant is tracked individually in our system, so it's hard to sort of bring them all together. But we are working on developing sort of a compliance overview across all grants and across all grantees, so that we will have that information available going forward. I will say that these grants, the HP, so there was 2, 3, and 4 that all ran sort of concurrently at different periods. And so there does tend to be, like, if you're doing it in one grant, you might have it in the other grant, so to speak. But we need to keep better data in terms of collecting it in one place under one umbrella, and that is my goal for 2025.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good recommendation.
Great. All right. Well, we have staff's proposed resolution before us. I'd like to move that we approve staff's proposed resolution.
I will second.
So I have Chair Escobedo moving, and I think that was Commissioner Mahoney seconding.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I'll take the vote. Alakani,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Sandville, absent, and Escobedo.
Yes.
That's 3 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, and the motion passes.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for the discussion and great questions, committee members, and Jennifer. Thanks for the presentation and work on all of these different HP versions, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So continuing the HP parade, item 7.3 goes to unreported HP4 grant budget deviations and unspent funds. So we will invite Heidi and Kim to present on item 7.3.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Efrain. I'm gonna pass it to Heidi.
Yeah, just when you thought you were done with unspent or budget deviations, we're going to pick it right back up again. And this time talking about the funding stream of HP4, which, as I mentioned earlier, ended on June 30th, 2024. And so in that process, we do have some grantees that have budget deviations. Please advance the slide. So we have, thankfully, these budget deviations tended to be less significant than the HP2. They all would have fallen, sort of near the threshold allowable, and under sort of what would have been under the staff's discretion to approve had they submitted a budget modification. Like the HP2 grants, budget deviations, a lot of it had to do with shifts in personnel, either increasing personnel and then decreasing either other personnel or other budgeted items. So this is 2 of the 4. There's a total of 4. Please advance the slide. And then these are the other 2. So the highest in this budget or group is 17.52. So again, all of it tends to really go around personnel and sort of changes in personnel. And we do know that during this period that there was a lot of attorney retention and recruitment issues around legal services. So it's not unusual that we see this kind of activity. We would prefer to see it in a budget modification request instead of a budget deviation sort of review looking. But so that is, there's a total of 4 for HP4, the 2 HP4 grants total. Next slide. So just like the HP2 grant before, we welcome any questions or comments, or we've also prepared a resolution should you choose to adopt it.
Thanks, Heidi. Any questions? No. Chris, I wonder if you didn't mind, just for protocol, maybe we could read aloud the resolution, and we can then see if there are any questions or entertain a motion.
Great. Should the committee concur, it is resolved that the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission Homelessness Prevention Funds Committee recommends that the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission approve the 2023 through 2024 Homelessness Prevention HP4 grant budget deviations as described in staff's memo dated October 21, 2024.
Thank you, Chris. Tammy and Jacqueline, any questions on this set of unreported deviations and unspent funds?
No question. I think just a general comment again. We're seeing the explanation being due to oversight. So just gentle reminders that this is a requirement. So it sounds like you're already down that path, Heidi and team. So
and I agree with that. And this is just such an important issue in our community, homelessness. And I think I really appreciate what we're doing, at the bar staff and everyone to help address these issues. And, reflecting back, Christopher, on what you were saying, that when there are issues, you really like to see people successful in getting this work done. And helping them to move forward and serving our homeless community. I really appreciate that, because it's a huge problem across the spectrum, and people's lives are on the line. A lot of mental health, healthcare issues involved with the homeless population. So, it's critical that we do everything we can to help others who are addressing this issue in our communities to move forward and help keep making a positive difference.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for that, and for the such important reminder what's the underlying issue or impact that these funds are trying to have in addressing such a critical issue. Thanks for recentering us. Sometimes we forget with like formulas and going into that there is an underlying thing we're trying to work on here, which is such a critical issue that's at a crisis level in many of our communities. So thanks for that. So just to pick up on Tammy's, this is just a general comment, and then we'll conclude, see if there's any other questions, and if not, entertain a motion. But we'll just say, you know, given the previous item and then this item, that maybe if there will be any future HP grant rounds, that maybe if we do any evaluation in between, maybe there's something to look at, to think about, and have other strategies or processes to support grantees and being a little bit clearer about it. I think that, to your point, Jennifer, it's very well taken that with Heidi's work and her leadership, we've sort of really honed in on TA is so critical, and that doing that has helped us to kind of identify these things and make sure that grantees who maybe did not know or didn't really understand what this meant and how to communicate it have had a better chance. But just noting that if we do a wrap up or evaluation in between, if there's going to be an HP5, then maybe that's a point we want to make sure to mitigate and see how we could improve. Obviously, in a, how do I say this, in a developmental fashion where it's not leading to burdensome requirements or any type of punitive steps on organizations who are trying to do this very critical work. But just wanted to share that as a perspective and thought, as we look ahead, knowing that these grants have already closed, as we look ahead for any future grant opportunities, I wanted to share that perspective just based on this conversation. But with that, any other questions from committee members or comments? If not, would definitely entertain a motion for the proposed resolution.
I'll move to approve.
And
Great.
I will second that.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Chris, I'll turn it over to you for vote.
Thank you. So Commissioner Mahoney moving, Commissioner Alakani seconding, and the vote begins now. Alakani,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Sandville, absent, and Escobedo.
Yes.
That's 3 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstentions. So the motion passes. And I'm unsure,
Thank you.
Chair Escobedo, if we have any other agenda items. I was going to point out there's one member of the public who's raised their hand. The formal public comment period has ended, so it would be up to the chair if you wanted to take additional public comment, but it's the chair's discretion.
Sure, in the interest of ensuring we can hear the public's voice in our meetings, I will say we can grant a 2-minute public comment period and return back to our agenda.
Thank you, Chair Escobedo. And since we offered 3 minutes earlier in the meeting, we might have to offer 3 minutes again. Okay, just I think that might be a rule.
Sure, I'll defer to staff on what's the required time. Thanks.
So we see your name presented as Nisa. You're unmuted, so you can talk now. Member of the public, Nisa or Nissa, you have been unmuted, so you can begin speaking now. And we're unable to hear you. You might be muted on your end. Okay, just in case you can hear us, we're not able to hear your audio. Oh, now we can.
You hear me?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think either one of you guys are doing anything to curb the homelessness, because 1/4 of the homelessness is coming out of Scientology. One day, a young man was kicked out of Scientology because he was gay. They're homophobic. And the other one lost one of his limbs and lost the eye, and he was tossed out of Scientology, not recently, but in the past. Now, most of those homelessness is coming out of Scientology, especially that young man who got kicked out of Scientology because he was gay. And thanks to that, thanks to SPTV, he was helped by his financial needs and was sent back home. I yield back the rest of my time.
Thank you, Nisa. Great. And with that, looking back at our posted agendas, we have no closed session items. And so seeing that, would like to entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting. Unless you all want to stay longer and have some more
I was
chat.
saying, I don't know if we need a formal motion, but I could be
We don't,
misremembering.
okay.
No, okay, great, yeah. I
We
love
don't?
that observance of, no, I don't think so, not to.
Okay, wonderful. Then with that and seeing we have no other business, it's been a pleasure seeing all of our wonderful committee members. Thank you so much for taking time out of your days and doing your duty. And just want to thank staff for, as always, great materials, presentation, information, and guidance on your end for us. Kim, I'll turn it back over to you to see if there's anything else you'd like to say before we adjourn.
Oh, thank you so much. And I know two Kims here would also make sure Kim Wormsley got her chance. But it's been a pleasure to speak with you all and to hear from you all. And thank you for your time and commitment. It means the world to us. And let us know if you have any questions. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
And also thank you to everyone and all of the staff for all of the administrative work and all of the efforts all together that you're doing. A lot of hard work and the technical assistance and working with organizations to help them understand the grant requirements and also allowing the public voice here. I appreciate that.
Thank you. That
With
means a
that,
lot.
yeah, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you so much, all.
Thank
Have a great
you.
afternoon.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.